Now imagine sitting in a quiet room and hearing doctors say one word: cancer. Most cases are not simply written into our DNA. Professor Seyfried is currently serving as a prof in biology at Boston College.
We had living organisms on our planet before oxygen came into the atmosphere.
Then what exactly is cancer at its core?
We have 1,700 people a day in the United States dying. They never heard of a mitochondria. The cancer cells have been corrupted over long periods of time. Cancer seems to be the most powerful motivational factor. These are the organelles that become corrupted in cancer.
Close your eyes for a moment and think of someone you love. Now imagine sitting in a quiet room and hearing doctors say one word: cancer. That single word can stop time. It can shake even the strongest person instantly, and instantly change an entire family's future. Cancer does not just attack the body, it disrupts emotions, finances, relationships, and hope. And despite decades of research, advanced chemotherapy, radiation, and now immunotherapy, billions invested globally, cancer remains one of the leading causes of death worldwide. Nearly 10 million people die every year, and about 1 in 5 people face a diagnosis in their lifetime. Even more concerning, projections suggest global cancer causes could rise by over 75% by 2050, largely due to aging population, environmental exposures, and modern lifestyle patterns. For a century, cancer has been defined mainly as a genetic disease, damaged DNA, mutations, and uncontrolled cell growth. The word cancer comes from the Greek karnikos, meaning crab, because ancient physicians observed how tumors spread like claws into nearby tissue. Yet, research shows that only 5 to 10% of cancers are inherited through abnormal genes, meaning most cases are not simply written into our DNA. So, if most cancers are not inherited, what else could be influencing them? In 1921, Russell Wilder at the Mayo Clinic introduced the ketogenic diet to treat epilepsy, showing that shifting the body's fuel from glucose to ketone could significantly alter metabolism. Researchers also suggest that intermittent fasting may exert protective effects against cancer. Its development, its progression in certain settings. So we are left with an important question. If most cancers are not inherited, if metabolism influences how cells generate energy, and if diet affects insulin and fuels pathway, if global cases are projected to rise dramatically, then what exactly is cancer at its core? How is it deeply connected to how cells process and manage energy? Could strategies like ketogenic diet, fasting, caloric restriction, target metabolism therapies actually play a role in managing cancer? Today, we explore a perspective that challenges conventional thinking in clear, simple human language. Because if cancer cells is truly a metabolic disease, that changes everything. Welcome to another thought-provoking episode of Khan Clinics. I'm your host, Dr. Amir Khan. And today we are joined by one of the most influential voices in the metabolic theory of cancer, Professor Thomas Seyfried. I'm your host, Dr. Amir Khan, and today we're joined by one of the most influential voices in relation with cancer and the metabolic theory that involves it, Professor Thomas Seyfried. Professor Seyfried is currently serving as a prof in biology at Boston College in Chestnut Hill, Massachusetts, where he continues his research and academic work. He earned his PhD in genetics and biochemistry from the University of Illinois and later completed postdoctoral training at Yale University of Medicine. He's widely known for his groundbreaking book, Cancer as a Metabolic Disease. In addition to his landmark work, he has authored numerous peer-reviewed research papers and has contributed in the growing global discussion of metabolic oncology. Professor Seyfried, welcome to Khan Clinics. Honor to have you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Khan. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Professor, tell us in simple terms, and I'm going to start from there. Cancer is a metabolic disease.
Yes, well, according to the National Cancer Institute and most national cancer institutes of most countries, they claim that cancer is a genetic disease. The view of cancer as a mitochondrial metabolic disease is what it actually is. The mitochondria in our cells provide the energy for all operational physiological processes. In cancer, that organelle, the mitochondrion, becomes corrupted, leading to insufficiency of the ability of a population of cells to use oxygen effectively. And this is a very gradual process where the cells transition from oxygen to a fermentation metabolism, which is energy without oxygen. And this is the direct result of a chronic disruption of the structure, function, and number of these little mitochondria in the cytoplasm. And that transition from oxygen utilization to a fermentation mechanism leads to dysregulated cell proliferation and growth, which is the definition of cancer, cell division out of control. And we can link that entire process back to abnormalities in the number, structure, and function of mitochondria. What's more, these abnormal mitochondria create ROS, reactive oxygen species, which cause the mutations in the nucleus. So the mutations in cancer are there, but they're downstream effects of the primary cause, which is disruption of the mitochondria structure and function.
Thank you for explaining that, Professor. Professor, give us our audience a little bit of an idea about some of the terms you've used here. You've used mitochondria, and for my audience, just to explain, these are cells. These are parts within the cells that are very important for growth and proliferation. Mitochondria is involved in oxygenation products. You've also used the term fermentation and then reactive ROS, reactive oxygen species, I would think.
Yeah. Yes.
Give our audience, how are these three related and why is it important that there has to be some malfunction of these before the cancer cells starts becoming uncontrolled proliferation?
Yeah. Well, this was initially recognized as the oncogenic paradox by Professor St. Georgi, a Nobel Prize recipient. He said, how is it possible that so many different things can elicit dysregulated growth, what we call cancer? Some people get exposed to chemical carcinogens, other people get radiation, some people get viral infections, some people have intermittent hypoxia, people get older. There's a whole range of things that could precipitate dysregulated cell growth. What is the common pathophysiological mechanism that links all of these very different kinds of things together to cause a tumor? And we have clearly shown the pathway that how this happens. So chronic disruption of our ability to obtain energy from oxygen. For example, I'm sitting here talking to you, you're listening to me. I'm breathing and you're breathing, okay? Because the cells in our body need the oxygen that we inhale. And every exhale that we have is CO2 and water. And these are the breakdown products of normal oxidative respiration in our body. The cancer cells have been corrupted over long periods of time to gradually shift away from using oxygen to generating energy using ancient metabolic pathways called fermentation. These pathways can generate energy without oxygen. These are the same pathways that existed in life forms billions of years ago before oxygen came into the atmosphere in our Earth. We had living organisms on our planet before oxygen came into the atmosphere. So what cancer cells are doing is they have lost the ability to use oxygen and fall back on ancient evolutionarily conserved pathways. And these creatures at those times proliferated unregulated. They were dysregulated in their growth. So the cancer cell is simply falling back on ancient pathways because the organelle, the mitochondria that you mentioned in the cytoplasm, has lost its ability to maintain the quiescence or differentiated state of the cell. It's a very important, I have come to know in my discussions with people that almost no one knows what a mitochondrion is. They never heard of a mitochondrion. Mitochondrion control our destiny. The life of our existence on the planet is controlled by energy efficiency. When our mitochondria run out of energy and are no longer able to keep energy balanced, we die. These are the organelles that become corrupted in cancer.
Yeah, that's fascinating how you've simplified everything. And Professor, you talk about ketones, which are fat from fat, sugars, which are from carbohydrates, and amino acid, which ultimately form the protein block. All three are interacting in a smart way, and you want to shut down two of the pathways to make sure that the cancer cells are not going to proliferate and
Yes.
hence become a bad one.
Yeah, well, we do that. We know that they can't grow without glucose and glutamine, and we know that because we take tumor cells and we put them in a dish with only saline, nothing, and then we take a stopwatch and find out how long it takes them to die, all of them to die. Okay, so then we put another dish with the same tumor cells and we add individual amino acids to the dish. In the presence or absence of sugar, which is carbohydrate, glucose to be specific. And we've asked, what is it that keeps these cells alive and what do they need to grow? And we found that the amino acid glutamine and the sugar glucose are the only two major fuels that can keep these cancer cells alive and proliferating. The reason why we have 1,700 people a day in the United States dying and millions of people throughout the world is because they don't understand what I just told you. They have never heard of this, that cancer is a mitochondrial metabolic disease.
Professor, thank you for explaining that. If the ketosis state is very, very critical, which it seems like we want to be in that state because it's very protective, we want to stay in the green zone, which you have identified as being the GKI index, is one of the ways. How do we go about staying in that state? So for example, if you just said, okay, Amir, you fast and you just quantified you mentioned 3-4 days of fasting. You fast over 5 days, 10 days, a month, or throughout the year. Would you be able to quantify for a good, healthy body how much of fasting is good for you? That's one. Or would you come back and say, no, this depends on individual bodies. It is going to vary. In the beginning, you may have to fast more, but it's also dependent on how much you work. So, or how heavy lifting you're doing, or how much energy you're spending.
Yeah.
What's your take on this? Then surely sometimes some practices like in Christianity or in Islam, just the 1 month fasting is not suffice. You got to be doing this ritual throughout or have a system allocated to it. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, well, these are such important questions because it does address individual differences among people. You know, if people have cancer, usually they're extremely motivated to get into the green zone. They do everything they possibly can because they know that their life depends on them getting into that green zone. And what we do for those folks is we usually put them on a carbohydrate zero carb diet, 4 or 5 because the body, it's too much. Sometimes it can be too much of a shock to stop eating and just drinking water cold turkey. So we have to have a slow transition of the body to adapt to the absence of carbs. And we usually do a zero carb diet for 12 or 14 days. And then we can walk into a therapeutic fast water only much easier. We also don't stay in this green zone constantly. There is a transition out of the green zone periodically, just to break up the monotony of what you need to do. I have some friends that are always like in or near the green zone because it's become part of their lifestyle. But we know that it depends on the level of motivation. Most people who have cancer or diabetes, look, I would say only cancer seems to be the most powerful motivational factor. Even people with type 2 diabetes not never, but they become less motivated than the guy with the cancer because they feel they're not going to be dead if they follow this. So they're in and out of these zones. They can go up to the orange zone, the yellow zone, back into the green zone, but they certainly moved themselves out of the red zone. And it's easier to move from the red to the orange. Even the yellow zone can be a little bit challenging to someone that's been addicted to carbohydrates. It takes some time for the brain to become unaddicted. And gradually you start to adjust your body. And exercise is massively important. We have found that people on these various thresholds that want to get down a little further, they go out and walk 5 miles. They come in and measure their GKI again. And within a few hours, you're back down into the green zone. So it's all self-powered. It's the motivation within the individual's self. The recognition that what you do, what you eat, and how you move can move your position to different levels, these different zones.
Professor, thank you for explaining that. We're running out of time. Final message for our audience.
Well, I would say knowing more about what I've just described. I think scientific literacy is an important part of remaining healthy. Once we understand the facts of what we understand to learn more about mitochondrial health, people don't talk about what do you mean mitochondrial health? That is the organelle that allows us to live on the planet successfully. We better know what I'm all about. People have always been focusing on the nucleus and mutations and gene expression profiles. The mitochondria controls the gene expression in the nucleus. So the mitochondria is essentially the controller of your destiny. And you want to respect that organelle and you want to treat it appropriately so that you can live more effectively in a healthier state. And I think people need to know that. That would be the major message.
Professor, thank you very much for helping us understand, and very powerful discussion, and actually a very enlightening discussion. Your thoughts about the metabolic theory, just in general, the ketosis and the importance and the fasting in itself, and especially when it comes in relation to cancer and its treatment, it's mind-boggling. So we really appreciate you being on the show, and thank you for being here today.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Khan. It was a pleasure.
What a remarkable journey we've just experienced together. The path to health isn't always straight, but it's always worth the effort. I hope today's conversation inspired you to take the next step in your wellness journey, armed with new knowledge and a fresh perspective. If today's episode left you inspired, share it with people, someone who need to hear this. Give us a thumbs up and your opinion. Keep exploring, keep evolving, and we'll see you in the next episode of Khan Clinics.